Jimmy Butler limped over to the locker room, and then at halftime, he was ruled out for the rest of the game. Warriors have said that he's going to get an MRI. The only thing that raises like the alarms for me is, you mentioned he did kind of extend his arms out. Jimmy always says he's going to be fine, but we'll have to wait for the MRI.
Kind of hard to start anywhere else, Mark. Obviously, we'll get into all the X's and O's of this game, but I don't think that there's anything more important right now than the health of one Jimmy Butler, who, and we'll talk about it, gets upended by Amen Thompson in that first half, goes down, did not return, very quickly ruled out for the remainder of this game with a pelvis contusion. And now the Warriors are left with 2 games between now and their first at Chase Center of the postseason, trying to figure out where they go from here.
Yeah, it happened late first quarter. Jimmy Butler stayed in to shoot the free throws as a result because Amen Thompson called for a foul. The Rockets were over the limit, stayed in for one defensive possession. Then there was another stoppage, and Jimmy Butler limped over to the locker room. And then at halftime, he was ruled out for the rest of the game. Warriors have said that he's going to get an MRI. Steve Kerr speaking postgame, and we'll hear from him coming up a little bit later on here in the postgame show, said, quote, Jimmy always says he's going to be fine, but we'll have to wait for the MRI. And again, the Warriors will get that, I would imagine, once they're back here in the Bay Area getting ready for Game 3 on Saturday. But ultimately, if I'm trying to look at the bright side of things, Evan, I'm looking at everything that went wrong for the Warriors in this game without Jimmy Butler, essentially for the final 3 quarters, without Podziemski for darn near the entire game. And even when he was on the floor, you could tell he wasn't his normal self. You don't get any kind of shooting game from Steph Curry, and Jalen Green goes for 38 points, and you're in Houston, and the Rockets couldn't really ever put you away until the end. I know it was consistently a double-digit lead for the majority of the game, but, I mean, the Warriors put some runs together here and there to get back within 11 or 10 or 12 or whatever the case was, like 5 different times in the second half of this game. Like, it wasn't really completely over until, like, the 5-minute mark of this game. So everything that went against the Warriors, and it was still technically, like, kind of up in the air until 5 minutes to go, I don't know. If Jimmy isn't out for the rest of the series, I think might have left me more encouraged that the Warriors do have control of this series, again, assuming Jimmy Butler's relative health.
Well, and I think it's because we also saw some of those players for the Warriors that weren't able to help, I think because of their lack of experience in Game 1, play better in Game 2. I think most notably Quinten was that guy.
He was good.
And he was a big part of it. The Warriors go down 20 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And at 9:46, there's a timeout called. And I think everyone is wondering, does Steve Kerr just throw in the white towel? Like, do you take... In fact, Curry hadn't come back into that point, and Draymond was in. And it's like, well, they're down 20. What's going to happen here? And instead of throwing in the white towel, he actually brings Curry back in. And they go on a 9-0 run. Post hits a couple threes during that stretch. He ended up with 12 for the game, made 4 of his 8 threes from downtown. And at that point, it's an 11-point game. If Draymond had hit the front end of his flagrant free throw, it would have been a 10-point game with 7:45 left. And at that
would have
point,
been the closest you would have been, I think, since the first half.
Yeah, I mean, they were down 20, it felt like, pretty quickly to begin the second quarter. Yeah. And again, they never led in this game, but they still put pressure on Houston. I don't want to say necessarily to close them out, because then the Warriors come out, they make a couple mistakes, Jalen Green hits a 3, they respond with an 8-0 run, and at that point, it's back up to 19 with like 5.5 left, and the game is over. But the Warriors continuously pushed Houston. They made them sweat a little more than I think they were expecting, especially after you lose one of your top 2 players on your team. I thought the Warriors showed a lot of composure and actual poise throughout this game, considering the hand that they were dealt before the game with Podziemski and then the way that it unfolded with Butler.
Yeah, I think if you were to poll, I mean, maybe even Warrior fans too, but specifically Rockets fans, Jalen Green scores 38 and Jimmy Butler exits for the game in the first quarter. Do you expect the game to be over for like the entire fourth? Most people would probably say, yeah. Yeah, and it was definitely not over until like the 4.5 minute mark. So again, we're trying to find the bright side on a loss, but I think there is a bright side there, and also 1-1 on the road to begin a playoff series against a quality team. Now, you could think the Warriors are the better basketball team, and I wouldn't argue with you. I think the Warriors, when healthy, are a better basketball team than the Rockets as well. I think they're going to win this series unless the Jimmy Butler injury news is is worse than we expect. We don't know what it is going to be, but you take 1-1 to begin a series on the road. Like, think of if the Warriors take care of business on their home court, like this is a 3-1 series, and that's a big if, but like that's what happens when you win a road playoff game. Now, if you just take care of business at home, you are in the driver's seat.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is what you wanted, and I think it's why people are feeling so good after game 1 is because whether you won or lost game 2, you accomplished what you came to get, which was a road win, and you did it right off the bat. So the Warriors are in a good spot. They're the underdog by seed in the series, but they are favored to win. And obviously, I think the entire series and really the entire postseason run, it's always hinged on health.
Yeah.
Can the Warriors triumvirate of a 37 and 2 35-year-olds remain healthy enough to propel you to a postseason series victory or potentially multiple? And that took a little bit of a hit tonight because there's a big question surrounding Jimmy Butler. He is the number one storyline coming out of this game, and his health and his availability moving forward is in many ways going to determine how far the Golden State Warriors go. We do have to talk about the play where Jimmy went down. And there's been, I think, a wide amount of takes, opinions. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media. Just on the record, I don't think it was a dirty play by Amen Thompson. I don't think he's a dirty player. I think what happened was he got tangled up with Draymond Green. I don't think that Draymond Green pushed him like I saw a lot of people theorizing on the internet. But what I think happened is Amen was trying to go for the offensive rebound. From what I could tell, his left leg clipped Draymond as he was trying to maneuver into position. His momentum took him forward. He had nowhere to brace his fall except for a player that was in the air. And while it looked like he extended his hands, I think he was honestly just looking for a way to protect himself, and unfortunately got caught with Butler, who is in the most vulnerable position you can be, which is mid-flight, in the air, and blindsided by the person you're getting hit by. So to me, it was inadvertent. It was unfortunate. I wouldn't label that a dirty play. Certainly nothing as close to the game 2 a couple of years ago in 2022 when Dillon Brooks knocked GP2 out of the air, which is something that I think a lot of people felt just because of the time, the place, and also the player on the other team. But I don't think about that as a dirty play whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. The only thing that raises like the alarms for me is you mentioned he did kind of extend his arms out as he came in contact with Jimmy. I think, though, if I try to put myself in Amen Thompson's position, and again, the context is that he was up and he was trying to, finish a shot, like a little 12-foot floater over Draymond. It misses. He tries to like squeeze his way past Draymond to try to position himself for an offensive rebound. They kind of get tangled up. Maybe he gets tripped or clips his foot on Draymond's leg, and he begins to kind of tumble and fall forward. And again, it's not Draymond's fault at all. These are just two dudes fighting for position. It happens literally like 200 times over the course of a single basketball game. And he starts tumbling forward, and he just tumbles directly into the path of Jimmy Butler, who is elevating for the defensive rebound. And I think what happens is instincts kick in, and as you're falling one into a dude and onto the ground, you kind of brace yourself. You don't want your head to hit a guy's knee, so you use your hands to protect yourself. That's at least how I interpreted it. And unfortunately, the result of him trying to protect himself kind of resulted in him flipping Jimmy Butler out a little bit more than maybe he would have if he didn't. It's an unfortunate play, but I'm with you. I don't think there's anything patently dirty about it. It's an unfortunate moment on a basketball court, and you just hope that it doesn't cost Jimmy Butler a game, 2 games, the rest of the series. Who knows? Because the Warriors desperately need him. But yeah, I'm with you. I did not think that was a dirty play, just an unfortunate the way that it played out, because you never want to see anybody get hurt.
Now, there is some good news. The Warriors have dealt with an injury like this before. Curry went down with a pelvic contusion. This was on May 20th in the win against Toronto. He missed a full week, but that was different because it was the regular season. There was obviously a lot of precaution surrounding Steph at the time, and a lot of the messaging out of the Warriors at the time was, well, if this was the playoffs, Curry would try to play. Yeah. Curry would look to give it a go. And we've already heard from Kerr. We'll have his full comments coming up for you in a little bit here on Warriors Wrap-Up with Evan Giddings and Mark Grandy. But it feels like Jimmy Butler is going to try and basically thug this out. And I, for one, believe that and Butler's a dog. We've all come to know this, and if you've watched any piece of his career prior to, you understand how tough of a player that he is. I would bet that unless there's something bad that comes out of the MRI, that we'll see Jimmy on the Chase Center floor this weekend.
My read is, because they told us it was a pelvis contusion, is that the x-ray they took in the building after he went to the locker room was negative, which is why they're calling it a contusion and not a fracture or a break or anything, just a bad bone bruise would be my guess. And then at this point, it is essentially a pain tolerance thing. And if the pain is so bad, maybe you can't play. But I'm kind of with you. It kind of feels like it's in Jimmy's nature to play through stuff like that. You mentioned the Curry injury. They also dealt with it with Kuminga after the Curry injury. He only missed one game as a result of it, but he came back and you could tell it was still kind of bothering him. The pain kind of sticks around for a while, but it is essentially just a pain tolerance thing, assuming that you're right. The MRI doesn't show anything worse than they're expecting. I think if he comes off clear on the MRI, then it's just a matter of, all right, Jimmy, how much pain are you willing to put up with? And it feels like Jimmy can put up with a little bit more pain maybe than anybody else.